whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing and whoever you're doing it to. Great to have you back here on channel with Bushka on Blitz for another look at a fantastic tank. This one, the Tier 9 American turreted TD, the T30. Now before we go much further, I just want to point out this is a patron sponsored post. As always, if you click on the orange P on the channel bar, you can become a sponsor of the channel for $1 a video. Fantastic to have those boys with me. But today we're looking at this tank particularly, and it shares a common thread with the T29, the T34 before it, which are both surprisingly heavy tanks. And that's what this tank is. It's a turreted TD, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a heavy tank, just with a bloody big gun on it. Now, why is that so important to make the distinction? You're going to see when you look at the rate of fire and the damage per minute of the other Tier 9 tank destroyers that this gun is not that fantastic in terms of performance. Now you've got a 105mm on the 29, a 120mm on the T34, and a 150mm on this tank. And it makes it so much more effective. The bigger the alpha and the bigger the gun on this frame and chassis, the more effective the tank is. If we look at the BL10 on the Object 704, it's 4.28 rounds a minute. The T95 gets 4 rounds a minute, and the Tortoise gets a whopping 8.45 rounds a minute at 400. But they're all non-turreted TDs. And that's the distinction we need to make here. This tank is a peek-a-boom heavy, and boy is it a good one. It's basically like playing an E100 with a proper turret at Tier 9, and it's super strong, super successful, and it was a huge surprise to me to actually get a hold of this weapon. It's only 3.5 rounds a minute. It's got 0.39 dispersion and a 3-second aiming time. For all intents and purposes, it's like playing an ISU 152 with a turret. And that's fun. And the tank is a lot of fun. And it was a huge surprise to me. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near that when I started rolling it out. It doesn't have the failings of these TDs. And at the moment, the way the game's played, it really supports medium tanks. And it supports short, sharp engagements where you can hold down and use the terrain and gun depression. And that's what this tank has in spades. It's got fantastic gun depression, and it's got incredible armour on its turret. And that armour on the turret means that you can be super effective. Now, it's got great guns all through the line. So when you get this tank and you've got to grind up, the 120mm, over 6 rounds a minute, 400 alpha, it's a huge 2 round a minute advantage over the T34. The 105mm even, you can make a living with that one. But the real joy of the gun comes in when you get the 155mm. It does monstrously big alpha, and because of the way that the tank has this huge, big, strong armor profile at the top of it, it can be super successful at going hull down, peek-a-booming, and removing itself from the fight. I don't want to push through too hard here, but honestly, the joy of this tank is in the gameplay, and that's where most of the interest should be. Now you can see straight away, we're looking at it from the perspective of the M103's Tier 10 gun with a whole lot of penetration going on, even with heat. Now you can see there are green spots there, but that's behind spaced armour and the turret. You don't need to worry, nothing's penning that gun mantlet. You have slight weaknesses in your cheeks, firing heat, which has, you know, massive 340mm of penetration on it, but they're very hard to hit, and if the tank's moving all the time, at distance, they become very, very small targets. And the further back the tank is, the less penetrating the shots coming in are. Obviously, the further away you are from an enemy, the more penetration value it's required to get through, because your shells lose velocity as they fly through the air. And you can see that the way this looks on the T34 and the T30, it's exactly the same tank. You're all green downstairs. Anything is going to pen you, basically. From the front with that very, very weak chassis. But you've got 10 degrees of gun depression. As you can see there, it's like an elephant taking a drink out of the water. And what that means is you can actually get in behind hills and berms and be impervious more or less to incoming fire. You hide behind that gun mantlet, you use your gun depression, you shoot off a round, and then you pull back away where you can't be hit. Now you have a weak spot on the top of the turret. Good players can hit that, and it's completely reasonable to assume that someone with big HE damage can hit that, but you shouldn't really be moving, and you can see that weak spot there is at 100% pen if they nail it. It's very, very weak. but it's hard to hit, and especially if the tank is moving. If you're stationary, you will get hit. Like most tanks, the key to success is to not stop moving the bloody thing. And I mean, you've got 50 millimeters at the back of the tank, which is terrible. And if you get hit there by HE, all the big caliber guns can go straight through it and do 1,000. And you're going to see that in some of the chat as we go forward. Now you can probably hear we've got wardrobes being installed here today. Unfortunately, that doesn't give me much of an opportunity. There's no rooms available for Bushka on Blitz to take, so I'm in the lounge room. We're just going to have to cop the sound as it comes. Now, it's a peekaboo tank. If you show that lower glacis, if you show your hull, you'll be penned by all and sundry. But it does have a swivelling turret. In other words, you can get this thing around 360 degrees. So you can set yourself up to hit mediums as they try and circle of death you, all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. What equipment do we use? Well, you're going to run your rammer, you're going to run your vents, and you're going to run a gun lane drive. It's got a 3-second aim time. You want to cut that down as much as possible because the longer the aim time, the more you're exposed to incoming fire, and it's very, very hard to take snapshots. You've got 0.39 dispersion and a 3-second aim time, so the gun will troll you. There's a lot of shots you'll try and take quickly that should be gone and should be good shots, but it will troll you and you will miss. One of the biggest things with this tank is being patient. I find it rewards me tremendously when I'm patient and I don't rush my shots. But if you don't run a gun lane drive, you're going to be going full bore with that full 3 seconds, and that'll hurt you. It makes life very difficult. If you've driven an ISU 152, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The BL10 will troll the hell out of you. Some days it'll hit everything. Other days you can't hit the side of a barn from 10 feet. You can't throw the shell in the ocean. Anyway, I digress. Tank destroyers are a bit of a rare breed at the moment, and they are struggling because maps are getting either flattened out completely so that there's no really good sniping areas, or a lot of undulating terrain is getting put in, like Oasis Palms and Desert Sands, where there's big dunes, and the new Canals map, where there's not a lot of fields of fire that you can just comfortably sit behind without having to worry about your flanks. So you're not spawn sniping anymore, and that means that you're going to have to watch out for mediums and other tanks, and it really makes gun depression. It puts gun depression at a premium, and it's difficult to do that with a non-turreted tank destroyer because you basically have to expose part of the tank, the whole front of the tank, or you won't get shots off. And when you do that, it's very easy for people to take shots at you. Your mobility is pretty lacking. A turret changes that. It makes this into just a big heavy tank with a big, big alpha damage on the end of it. And even though the damage per minute numbers are very low, it's not important because you're not playing a damage per minute game. You're not like the Tortoise where you want to get in front of people as often as possible and just out damage them to get the kill. You also don't have the 1800 hit points the Tortoise has. But what it does very well at 155 millimeters that the Tortoise doesn't is it ammo racks. We're going to have a quick look at what I'm talking about here. Now, a 155 millimeter shell is a very big shell, and when it enters an enemy tank, it's got a far bigger chance of hitting modules and doing module damage. The bigger the shell, the more module damage is likely, and that's why the 183 particularly will smash it. Now, you will hit IS-3s, IS-7s, IS-8s on the corner like that. They've got their ammo rack at the front. You go straight through the side of that pike nose and you'll smash them. Likewise, if you use your HE, which has more than enough penetration on lower tier tanks, you can do 900 to 1,000 damage in a shot. You don't even need the ammo rack. Now that's the joy of a Peekaboo 155mm tank. It gets these things happening. But you can't always find situations where you can actually put yourself in a position to do that. You can also side-scope a bit with this tank. It's actually pretty effective with it, and it's a good thing to know. You can do it in the T34, and just like that, it's got the same tracks, the same chassis. It's quite long, and so you can get steep angles. You can't do this nearly as effectively in most non-turreted TDs. You can see it allows you to take the gun out at an angle, and unless you have a really good rate of traverse like the Tortoise, it's very difficult. Big tracks, very easy to eat shells on those tracks. So always be aware, if you play this like a heavy, you're going to be alright. But the way it kicks ass, takes names and chews gum is hull down. And I'm going to show you one of my favourite little spots in town here on Middleburg. Now, it's not often I get to go town, but this tank is made for this spot here. With a little bit of gun depression, a little bit of nous, and using your noggin, you can see just how hard it is to get through this channel. Anyone that really steps up to the plate and advances and has a bit of nuts, puts their minerals on the floor, is going to cop 640 alpha directly. And you'll see what we do to this poor IS in a second. He wants to come through and he cops it deluxe. There's one into the IS-8. There's a YAG tyre, an IS and an IS-6 down there, and none of them want to make the trip. And I don't blame them particularly, because this is what I mean. 3.5 rounds per minute is rubbish. It's just over 2,000 damage per minute, and on most tanks, that just would not be a sustainable kind of idea. But this isn't a medium tank. It's not a tortoise. It doesn't get so up close and personal to do its damage. And it can absolutely make an intimidating living. No one wants to come down this channel. And there we go, there's another ammo rack. It ammo racks like a boss. That YAG Tiger's got a great gun, a really, really accurate, fast-firing, good alpha weapon, good DPM, but he just can't get a shot. And we're just sitting here hull downing now. The other glorious hull down position, which everyone in the world should know about. And obviously this map was removed for quite some time. Now Ricochet, I'm with Ricochet in plat. He's been really, really aggressive here. He's using the hull down on the T-54 and he knows he's got me on his shoulder. So there's very little chance that these guys are going to push up. And you can see we're always moving backwards and forwards. We never sit still. We never let it just be an easy target for the enemy. We're taking shots where we can. Rico's just moving in and out. And we're both going to focus fire on the T-30 in a tick. But very, very difficult. And the other thing is too, the way the game mechanics work, it'll quite often look like there is a shot on me, and they'll take it and it'll just hit dirt in front of me. And you can see that's what's happening there all the time. It's a frustrating thing, I know, but it's something you should take advantage of. And I've called the T-30 out. Rico's going to smash him. There we go. And more to fool these guys. You can't go against a hull-down T-30 and a hull-down T-54 and expect to do any good at all. So back into the actual gameplay itself. We'll look at some interesting games here. We've got a few. We've looked at the hull-down, specifically the hull-down method of play with the tank. We've looked at its a little bit of side scraping, the way you can ammo rack. We've had a chat about how you should be using HE on lower tier targets and tanks where you can penetrate with it. And with a 155mm gun, you'll be able to do that a lot more than you would with the 120. But let's look at how it all slots together in actual gameplay. Now, you know here, I am platooned with Agon. As usual, he's in an ST1, which makes life a lot easier because obviously the ST1 can hold a line very, very firmly. There's a YAG Tiger up there, there's an E75 there. We're going to take one for our troubles, but we know he's got a lower plate that can be penned. And then we're going to move up here and just start side scraping off this wall. Now, you'll use adrenaline a lot on this tank, and I'd always carry it as a consumable. At 3.5 rounds per minute, you are going to want to up that by a round a minute at times, and that's basically what you're going to be doing with adrenaline. And it's really, really big, long load times on your weaponry. But on tanks like the 75, and the 75 really is the kind of tank you want to take out of the game early, it's really important. And we're just now moving around the field behind our heavies. We've only got 1,500 hit points. Now, the Tortoise has 1,800, which is just crazy. But we don't have that kind of hit point toll to carry. Still, we have a fantastic amount of armour, and it's really important to remember that. And you've got the kind of gun that can penetrate all and sundry around you. Plus, in a situation like this where you can see us bouncing shots, a normal tank destroyer wouldn't be able to make shots like this. They don't have the turret for it. They'd be in all kinds of strife. They can't move forward and guard both flanks at once. But you can. You can hull down across here, or you can turn it up the hill and hit that T-54. It's a really interesting tank in that you don't have to be at the front line to be successful. You can just slot in like I did there behind Aegon at times, and at other times side scrape off walls, and they're all valid tactics. This VK30, God bless him, he just bugs out. We load up HE because, as I said before, you can take a lot into these lower tier mediums and tank destroyers if you get the right shot, but he's not going to sit still long enough for us to really get the right shot. He takes off, and I end up cutting out a big section of the gameplay here just because it's him not coming out while we cap it. And again, always angle the tank where you can. It's really important. And that big alpha, 640 damage, peekaboo. It's where you're going to be making your living. I really thought this tank would suck. I looked at the raw numbers and I never went near it. And Chappos and Snake Eyes both got this thing and crowed and crowed and crowed about it. Snake in particular, I think, was about 72%. And you can see I've just cut off. We waited in the cap server a long time. And he kept telling me that this thing was an ammo rack machine. And the last game I'll show you is the first game I ever played in it. It's very interesting. So there you go, over 4K. I had so many 4K games in this. I had a 6,300 game in it, which I lost. I didn't record it. Don't know why. I was recording at the time too. I just forgot to press the button. So here we are, Winter Malinovka, and you can see up the top, I think that's Rico again in a T-54. He's pushed up hard, and we're now going to move around. Now, we've got gun depression, so we can actually make a fairly good tilt at this hill here. It's tough for some of the Russian tanks. There are spots where they can be effective, but this rock here is a great example of where you can basically move up and be free and clear with your gun depression. Get behind that rock when you need to. Now, we've blown adrenaline early. I blow adrenaline early in this tank more than just about any other tank because you'll get in situations where you really want to use it. A very, very good shot there from that VK. He knows what he's about. Over 700 on that. That's a really nice roll. And we're using this rock here to shield us from this T-54 as he comes up, and then coming back out again and getting shots on him. You can see we're just working that rock there, hull down, and almost side scraping off it as well, making what he can see a very, very flat area. There we go, back behind it. Very tough to get penned here with that rock where it is. Always look for spots on the battlefield where you can hull down. That's 75, we just want him. No, don't waste the shot, hold on to it, use it on someone over here. Because that was always going to be a bounce in the 75. Rico and I are just slotted up nice and tight here, both looking after each other's flanks. And I'm going to push up and use my hit points. That's where the big alpha is really valuable. You'll get tanks that are on 600, 700 hit points, and when you can knock them with one shot and pull back in, it's why there's an inordinately large advantage to front loading your damage. But like everything, it gets to a point where there's some trade-off. 640 alpha is just about the right number. And you see, I want to get the E75 here because I know I'm on a low enough hit point value that he can actually one-shot me if he gets a good roll, but it's not available, the shot's not available, so we just take the IS3. Now the key with that game was obviously those rocks. You've got to find spots around the maps where you can hull down, even in close proximity to the enemy. And you saw in Castilla, I couldn't hull down, so I side-scraped off a building. And that's what we're going to be doing here. This is Falls Creek, or as we're fond of calling it, Fails Creek. The reason being that you get so many people going bridge on this map while your team or the enemy team just goes to cap and wins it on a cap. And I'm not a big fan of games where you win on a cap, but I'll take any win, any port in a storm. And if the enemy's going to try and muscle up and all go lemming on the bridge, then the cap is where you're going to be. That being said, Snake Eyes is here in the Conqueror. and he's just grinding his way up towards the FV215B, so I'm giving him a hand. Most of these games was me running the tank with stock engine and stock tracks. I hadn't ground the tracks and the engine out yet. I did get there on them, and quite quickly, because we had a very, very good win rate in this tank. I think we're currently about 76% in it. Most of that platooned, obviously, and with good players too, so it makes life a lot easier. Snake's in the comp, though, and they've pushed up hard on him here, so we're just going to put some shots into the T-54. And it's one of the big problems with the Conk is it's got a brilliant gun, but it's got a very light profile for heavy in terms of armour. But still, that gun can make a killing when the need is on it. And they're all tunnelling here. They want Snake. They want a piece of that action. You can see we're just using that gun depression and that hull down. We're going to hit him on the way past. We don't want to go in the water. See how he goes in the water? That means that it's very, very tough for him to traverse around and put himself in a position where I can't hit him. If we'd have gone in the water there as well, we'd never have turned the tank around in time to get a shot off. Trap for young players, so always think about that now. Snako, he's on the right-hand side. That KV4 is really keen on getting stuck into him. Not much we can do about that, but put more shots in. And you can see we've still got a VK on the bridge sniping there. Like, what's he doing? Hopeless, pointless. SU-152. Switch up to AP just to make sure that we get the shot in and get him all done. Here comes the VK, who is going to be the one who gets us in the end, but we've really done the business here. Snake and I have held this flank, dished out plenty of damage, and the VK is just going to take us. But there's not much we can do about it. We're hoping that we've put enough damage in to actually win the game. You can see there, we get a nice bounce. Gives us a chance to just get that one more shot. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm in the water now. I cannot really manoeuvre the tank at all, but we've made him a one shot, which is what the aim was, and that's important. So VK's still sitting by the bridge. And we're going to fast forward through this. You'll see the T-54 ramming, just about kill himself on the ram, but he does get the kill. Hooray for Hollywood. 2 games to go, guys. I won't bore you for too much longer, but the next 2 games are actually quite great. They're fun. They're not brilliant. Nearly 5k there. We carried the day. Again, looking for places where you can hull down. This is the bad spawn on Copperfield. Now, Ricochet's gone middle because they've got an IS-7 platoon, and we're really thinking they're going to charge and rush, but they just don't. And one of the reasons we do very well here is there's an AFK Ferdinand, which makes life easier for us. But you'll also note the poor old IS-7 cops a flogging from me. Here we go. We're semi-hull down here. Now, you've got to always look for these hull down positions. And I've blown adrenaline because I can sense the IS-7s want to push up, and they're going to charge. And if we don't put some shots into them, they'll be in strife. Now, again, a Russian tank coming around a corner in a pipe nose versus a 150mm gun is never, ever, ever a good idea. And the IS-8 wants to do it as well. Now, we don't get the ammo rack there because we can't get it low enough, but I know where the ammo racks are in these tanks, and I'm always going to slot my shell right into the side above the drive wheel. It's an absolute killer, and you'll get more ammo racks on those kind of tanks than anything else. Now, you'll see we're still going this hull down route, and we've taken out one of their IS-7s. We've really put some heat into the other IS-8. The other IS-7's coming across. He's going to cop one for his troubles as he goes through. There you go. And we're just going to turn and finish him off. He only gets tracked. We do have big tracks, and you will eat a lot of shots in your tracks, to be honest, if you angle the tank and wiggle it just a touch. There you go, that's the end of him. So we get a gold mastery badge in this game. It's quite a sneaky mastery because, well, for starters, we did 2k in one shot to start the ball rolling, which is always fun. And we've hit a few, and we do our share. Like we absolutely do carry, but there's also an AFK Ferdinand that we set on fire and kill. So there's probably 3k damage from 2 shots, which is not a normal thing. And a lot of people do have troubles getting masteries in this tank. I've picked up a couple. There's Ricochet saying, so it turns out they didn't rush. He wanted to be the sneaky bugger who went through the middle of the map and came up behind them as they all rushed, and instead he just got absolutely slaughtered, and he begged me not to put this one up. But Rico, you've done plenty of carries for me in your time, mate. Don't be upset that we use this one. The AFK at the back, the 30, and you'll see what I mean by this. It's a bit of a lucky mastery. We smashed him, set him on fire, and did 1,000 damage on that, and we did 2,000 on the other. So we really didn't deserve a mastery, but deserves ain't got nothing to do with it, as Clint Eastwood said in Pale Rider. We did do another mastery soon after this. I was playing with Josh 8 on Fort Despair, and I'll show you the spot, because more than the game itself, I took a photo of the screen cap for it. There you go, 5-7 basically, but 3k, that was 2 shots. The next game, the mastery we did in this, where we did nearly 6,400, I want to show you, if you look at the inset here, this is the space we use. Now, one channel on Fort Despair, this area at the back that has a lot of cover from camo, from those trees there, and the actual berm itself allows you to go hull down. We chalked out over 6,000 damage from that spot with Josh. He covered the right-hand side, and I just basically stopped him dead. So if you're ever wanting to go for another spot, that Fort Despair spot is an absolute killer. Now, this is my first ever game in this tank, and it's the last game I'll show you today. And on the other team, there's a couple of very, very good players. Hosua, who I've played with, Aegon's had quite a few plays with him, and he's a very good player. He plays in Ace. And I'm telling him, g'day mate, this is my first game in the tank, all those kind of things. Also, to note in this game, you'll note my iPad's been smashed to bits, and occasionally I have to restart it because it starts pressing its own buttons. This game's also notable for the fact that a whole bunch of them go down and get absolutely swept under the carpet, and then proceed to have a massive flame war while we're fighting our way through. Now, there's Hosua in the T-54. He's a very, very good player, much better than I think. And there's his platoon mate in the ST1, an FOW guy who is also a good player. Asks if I'm recording. I tell him, yeah, always. I usually am recording when I'm playing at home anyway. I can record on the laptop via Air server. But so this is my first game in this tank. Be aware of that. First game, first shot. Hosua's in the T-54 there. And if you've watched my 4D review, this is exactly what happened in my first game in the 4D on my first shot. If you haven't guessed it already, Rico's pushing up, doing the right thing. Here comes Hosua and his T-54, the number one target on the enemy team. First shot. Yep. That's how we're going to roll. If this tank, there's Hosua, he's laughed. You've got to laugh about that kind of stuff. No legislating for a 150mm gun. Now, we push a little bit too far forward here, and we do. You can see the E75 is losing his shit. Rico's going to scout and give me targets. We're down quite a few tanks here. I'm just telling him, first shot in this tank, and it's an ammo rack. And I'm just kind of giggling and having a laugh. We take a shot from the IS-3 we shouldn't have taken. And I just get told to shut up. This 75's not happy. But you see again, straight away, hull down. We're just peeking over the edge, using our gun depression, putting shots in. Rico's doing a great job. He's hanging on the fringes, just spotting targets up. And even though there's 4 of us left, and we are down on numbers, as long as Rico and I are alive, I'm pretty confident. There's a lot of tanks there we can dust up very easily. The ST1, Hosua's teammate, is our biggest worry, and that's who we're looking out for. Now, I'm looking for a kill there. I only had a very, very slim shot on the edge. You'll note a tick. My gun does a couple of firing on its own experiments, which is never good. We're still in the game. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. First game, it's hilarious. This tank, this is what really got the adrenaline pumping for me on this tank. The fact that it can ammo rank tanks so easily, and the fact that it's got gun depression like this, where you can just peek over the top, you can see how far over that Tiger 2 has to go, and he can't get shots off because he just doesn't have any gun depression, and you'll see my gun fires there, just random. Yep, so I drop adrenaline because, yeah, there you go. This E75 is not happy. Why you have to be so upset, buddy? But there you go, he is. We're not too worried about the 95. Rico's flanked all the way around, and he's now down there amongst them. It's 2 on 5, but the T95, I don't really look at it. It fires again on its own. I was starting to worry right now that we were never going to get it done because there's not much you can do. When it starts firing or pressing consumables, that's the other one, when it presses consumables on its own, but different parts of the screen go at different times. So 2 on 5 now, but they're quite low. Rico's going to dust up that IS-3 over there on the left. He's been living on borrowed time for a while. The 95's very slow to come up. The KB3 is in a poor spot. So I'm feeling pretty confident here. Oh my God, this E75. He is not happy. He's really typing up a storm. He's very gifted. There's that 95, and this is what I'm talking about. Without a turret, he's really got to expose himself, and he's trying to get up here, and we're just getting free shots because we don't have to expose anything but our really, really strong gun mantlet and turret. Rico's now down into the ST1, so I'm just going to worry about this T95, and we've got plenty of time yet. There we go. Patience in this tank is a real key, like most tanks, but particularly in a tank like this. You are so strong in your upper body. You've skipped leg day. Your hull is absolutely crap, but you've got this massive alpha, and you've got this massive, big, strong turret, so you should be using them and putting yourself in positions to use it. And you'll see on every map we've been on, I've found spots for this tank to hull down, side scrape in a pinch, or be behind a line of heavies. And Rico did a fantastic job there getting to town and pouring on. The E75 is still not happy. Jesus, these people, where do they come from? So that was my first game in the T30, and you could probably imagine that excited me quite a bit. It's got all the hallmarks of the tank: brilliant hull down, occasional ammo rack, big alpha, and the ability, if you're patient, to really take advantage of the terrain. So look, I heartily recommend this tank. I think it's got a whole lot going for it, and I think you're going to enjoy it immensely. If you're grinding up this line, though, this could be the place to finish. I'm not a big fan of the T110E4, and Snake and the other boys have also not given me great feedback on the T110E4. And while I've got the E3, which for all intents and purposes is just a big-ass bully, I think I'm going to steer clear of the E4 and save my money for new lines coming along in the future. As always, I've been Bushka on Blitz. You've been wonderful. If you do want to sponsor the channel, I'd appreciate it. It's wonderful. $1 a video is all it takes, and it's only on these kind of teaching videos or reviews. It's not on the standard damage videos or just gameplay videos, but you do what you want to do, humans. I really love the way the channel's growing. The chat on here is fantastic. We're well over 4,000 subs now and 330,000 views, so I'm very proud of the way you're all picking it up and talking amongst each other and making it a bit of a knowledge source and a resource, and I'm learning a lot from the subscribers in the channel as well. You guys are amazing. As always, thanks to those who helped with making the video. Rico, Agon, Sewer, you poor bugger, Ricochet, Snake Eyes. Yeah, rock and roll, boys and girls. Thanks very much for watching. Stay safe on the battlefield.